Welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. Welcome to my third part of this live stream. I'm not going to do the entirety of that article again, folks. I'm just going to start off where I basically left off, because I was 30 minutes into my live stream and it basically went nutty. I decided to basically just start off here and do a part 3 for this article and just get it done. Either way, folks, before we continue, go check out Comicsgate books up on Indiegogo. Books like Starburian Tales, which you can back for $30 up now on Indiegogo, or or £24 in Britain if you happen to basically be backing that book there. Or as well as go check out, the Blue Bombshell Returns campaign, which you can back up on Indiegogo right now for $25, and you have a choice of several different covers. I'm just going to leave that for there, folks. And of course, you already know, go check out my own book, when it finally releases, Scumdogs, when I finally get it up on Indiegogo. Scumdogs, a loving parody of 80s and 90s cartoons, basically making fun of it and basically doing it with tongue-in-cheek and fun. That book will be great as you see the Scumdogs fight their arch enemies, the Wild Rangers, in epic battles, and basically having a great time reading it. Either way, let's get into today's article and basically finally finish it off. Either way, I forgot to go to share screen. Just a moment, folks. Share screen. Here we go. Now we can go do it, folks. Now, where we left off was under the influence of phallatic gradualism. The rarity of transitional series remains as our persistent bugbear, as the article says, folks, because Darwinic evolution doesn't seem to make much sense, because basically, in the fossil record and geology, they can't find the gradual steps of one species from another. There are notable examples where they basically prove that evolution like this can exist, where they saw one transitional species to another, but that's very rare, because usually in these kinds of records, you get great breaks of it. Maybe these great breaks in these evolutionary chains is basically because of maybe a sudden mass extinction, like what we're talking about here with the 26 million year cycle. That some people basically science specify seems to basically what happens every 26 million years. That entire species go extinct in a sudden cataclysm that basically wipes out almost all life on the planet. Sometimes 75%, maybe 90%. Either way, it's truly devastating, and the life afterwards, basically for millions of years, takes that long to recover from it, a new species to appear. Now, the fossil record only basically says this, and basically, there are great big breaks in the fossil. You can't find missing links, especially certain species. You can't find how one species eventually turned into this species. You just find these big breaks that basically make no sense. So Darwin himself even specified, due to the geologic record, his theory. So people basically want to find evidence against it, they can just point to the geological record. Now, that only proves that maybe Darwin's theory is incomplete and basically completely proven. Because maybe there are different things in evolution that we have not basically come across and basically no one's thought about yet. But that doesn't say that evolution doesn't happen either. Remember that, folks. Either way, as the article says, under the influence of phallatic gradualism, basically they can't find how one species gradually turns into another in the fossil record in geology. The rarity of transitional series remains as our persistent bugbear. Yeah, because it's so rare to find one species eventually evolve another. There are examples, I should remind you, folks. It's not basically said that there isn't basically, you can't point the geology and the fossil record proving that evolution exists, or basically saying that it could be evolution. You can see one species transitioning into another. But usually there are great breaks in this long road, how one species evolves into another. Maybe you see a little bit of it, but you don't see basically you just don't see the missing links. There's certainly some of them in the fossil record. You can't prove one species to another. You can see some evolution, maybe some transition. One species evolving to another species, you see some transition, but eventually you come across these big breaks in the record that make no sense. So you can't prove that it's completely evolution either. At least I'm trying to get there, folks. Basically, read the rest of this article to you. I said start from here, but either in this thing, and with the verdict cycle, how do I do this extinction events? Well, due to the mass extinction events and possibly the 10 or so million years it takes for after basically these mass extinction events, if you look at the verdict cycle, You have these day of Brahma, where life flourishes, and you have the night of Brahma, where basically all life seems to basically cease to exist. This is what we're talking about here, folks. Basically saying that the day of Brahma, which we're currently in, folks, where life flourishes and is basically more or less basically roaming across the planet, due to this eventual night of Brahma, every 26 million years or so, this mass extinction event, life ceases. All we're saying here, folks, is that, well, the evolutionary record seems to pan out this mass extinction events happening every 26 million years. But afterwards, there's a thing about what about life basically eventually reappearing? How does this cataclysm prove basically melt? Does it prove against evolution, or does it prove it? Well, afterwards, life eventually does basically bounce back, but it can take millions, maybe even 10 million years to do so. Basically, the Vedic text is kind of basically lines up what they say in the Vedic text as well, because during the night of Brahma, life ceases to exist, and the day of Brahma, life basically comes back, it bounces back, it flourishes. What they're saying here, folks, is that basically what they found in the geologic record, maybe it basically lines up very nicely with these Vedic texts and the idea, and maybe there's more of these religious texts than basically just saying that maybe they're just nothing, that they have no merit on scientific theory or anything. But maybe in reality, folks, maybe someone basically noticed a cycle of evolution and mass extinction that basically coincides with what which was written down with what was written down in these Vedic texts. So let's read this part of the article again, because I think I explained it enough. Under the influence of phyletic gradualism, the rarity of transitional series remains as a persistent bugbear. Many breaks in the fossil record are real. They express the way in which evolution is not fragments of an record. The sharp break in a local column records what happened in the area at the time, because that sharp break could be basically describing a mass extinction event, perhaps, folks. Although phyletic gradualism prevails as a picture for the origin of new species in paleontology, very few classic examples purport to document it. Yeah, a few authors have offered a little interpretation of this situation in Stew. Gradual progressive evolutionary change is a rare phenomenon. We usually explain the plurality of cases by a newly ritualized invocation of the inaccuracy of the fossil record. What I'm trying to say, folks, is indeed, geology is very fragmented and can basically shows how fragmented Darwin is, because it can't basically prove species evolved into another species continuously. How it doesn't basically fall down this neat step of ladders. Because basically it's just like you get a step, then basically there's something that basically blots out all life. Basically, you can't find the next fossil in the linear path from one evolution to another. So yeah. This is the thing, folks. There is some steps that can basically, and this is why some people basically purport Darwinism. This shows evolution, how we can see one species gradually evolve into this species. But then there's a great big break, folks. There's no thing, basically, they don't see where the next step goes. They can't find the next step. They can't find the next species that evolves. So these are these great breaks. What caused these great breaks? Perhaps mass extinction events? Then basically, let me try this again, folks. Or did maybe this new species that evolved, maybe it didn't leave any remains behind? That's stupid, isn't it, folks? So no, maybe there were indeed mass extinction events, and maybe evolution is real, but you can't prove the steps from one species to another, not completely. You can show a few steps, that's about it. And some proponents of evolution in Darwinism say that proves that evolution is real. But what about all the other species, all the other breaks in the chain? Yeah, you basically show one species possibly evolving into this other species, but then that's it. You don't show where it basically evolved into us. You can't find missing links to humans. You can't find the missing links to some animals that we have today. No, you can't do anything like that. Well, these mass extinction events with the 26 million year cycle, folks, and how this deals with evolution and possibly how maybe life flourishes every time there's a great mass extinction. So let's move on. Gourd and Eldridge, two guys who are basically trying to propose this idea that maybe evolution isn't completely 100% proven. They proposed the theory of punctuated equilibrium to explain what is really happening. Indeed, folks. Because maybe I should read basically. Maybe you should go back here, folks. Yeah, Darwin's theory that new species arise as a slow and steady transformation of entire populations is not reflected in the fossil records. And indeed, folks, as I explained, yeah, Darwin's theory that new species arise by the slow and steady transformation of entire populations is not reflected in the fossil record because we have these great breaks in it, as I said. This within a continuous sequence of intermediate forms showing incremental changes on the way to a new species should have been found in the rock strata. Unfortunately, intermediate forms connecting species have never been identified. The absence of missing links had also been Darwin, who attributed to the imperfections of the geological record and the origin of species, Darwin wrote. Remember, I told you earlier, I said in this live stream, folks, that Darwin himself specified that the geological record doesn't basically can be used as basically evidence that his theory doesn't really work because they don't found incremental evidence that one species evolved into another. In his own words, you can see right here, folks. Yeah, these are Darwin's own words from his books. Intermediate links. Yeah, geology does not have any such finally graduated organic chain. This is the most obvious, gravest objection, which can be urged against my theory. Indeed, folks, because there's no evidence. Well, maybe that just proves his theory, Darwin's theory, is wrong. The geological record is extremely imperfect, and this will to a large extent explain why we do not find interminable varieties connecting together all the extinct and existing forms of life by the finest graduated steps. He also rejects these views on the nature of the geological record will rightly reject, those who reject these views on the nature of the geological record will rightly reject the whole theory because the geological record doesn't say this. They can't find evidence that one species evolved into another in a continuous chain. So therefore, maybe his theory is wrong. This is where these two scientists come in, folks. In 1972, Harvard University paleontologists Stephen J. Gerd and Niles Eldredge wrote their seminal paper titled "Punctuated Equilibria: an alternative to phyletic gradualism, evolution, in which they argued that the fossil record is not imperfect as claimed by Darwinists, or should I say, basically, folks, indeed, Darwinic evolution might not be the right word. That's what phyletic gradualism means. Yeah, indeed. In their words, folks, in which they argue that the fossil record is not imperfect as claimed by Darwinists. Indeed, folks, they're claiming that maybe Darwinists are wrong here. The many breaks in the fossil records are real, and they express how evolution occurs. The absence of a transitional forms implies that evolution does not occur by the slow and gradual transformation of a species. Maybe it also doesn't prove that their theory is right either, folks. That maybe they're saying that basically evolution isn't slow. They're not saying that's fast either, folks, but these great breaks in the evolutionary chain, maybe there's something more to it. Maybe it's not because it's not because there was another species that filled the gap, basically like one step to another, that basically this species gradually changed and basically evolved into this species. But in reality, maybe it's something else. Perhaps if you have massive extinction events, maybe this species went extinct, another species maybe closer to it filled its niche after the devastation occurred, folks. It's an idea. Maybe this is what Jay Gerd here, Stephen J. Gerd and Niles Eldredge are trying to express here. They go on to say basically, as I've already expressed before, folks, gradualistic evolution and gradualism doesn't seem to really make much sense. If it was, we would find it basically. We would find easily in geology. They're trying to say that with the absence of with the sudden disappearance of some species, maybe there's more to it. What filled this niches after the species went extinct? Why can't we find one step from one species to another? How did this happen? So I'm saying here, folks, as we get back to basically, Mr. Stephen J. Gerd and Niles Eldredge's part of this article, we hear their theory of punctuated equilibrium, and how maybe it basically is at odds with basically classic Darwinism. Now, could Eldredge propose the theory of punctuated equilibrium? I hope I explained it all right, folks. I didn't want to have to go through the entirety of the article to explain it all again. I decided to basically start off where I basically left off in the last live stream and try to get you to understand it right. So let's go over here and see if anyone else is watching us at this point. Maybe I made a big mess of this, so I'm not quite sure. Wrong one. Either way, let's get back to what were their names again? Coord and Eldridge, or should I say, Dr. Stephen J. Gould, I guess Gold. Is it Gold or Good? I'm going to say his name is Stephen J. Good here, and Niles Eldridge. Let's hear their theory. Good and Eldridge proposed the theory of punctuated equilibrium to explain what is really happening in the fossil record. They said that the fossil records show long periods of stasis or equilibrium extending for millions of years, during which time there's little or no evolutionary change, which are punctuated by rapid episodic periods of speciation occurring within the space of a few thousand years. Indeed, folks, this is what we see with basically the mass extinction events. For the most part, there are long periods where nothing happens, but then there's something like this quick mass extinction event, and species do all they can to survive. And during this time, these species, over maybe a few million years, speciate and then basically thrive after the disaster is over. They're saying that there's no record of these species, or should I say, there's no gradual evolution of these species, because these species over a short period of time, maybe millions of years, even though I said maybe a few thousand, but that could basically be the disaster itself taking place, folks. Maybe an ice age, maybe a meteor impact, but over that time, these species basically have to deal with maybe lots of different species going extinct, then doing all they can to survive, and eventually maybe evolving from it. Though they do stay only a few thousand years, in the space of a few thousand years, where basically these new species seem to appear. That could be basically maybe in a few thousand years after millions of years have taken place, these species that basically spread out. And I'm trying to say, folks, after a massive extinction event, for millions of years, 10 million years, after 10 million years, species evolve and basically begin to fill the earth again. Maybe over a few thousand years after these species evolve, they then begin to basically really make their mark on the world and basically fill up and basically are seeing the fossil record. I'm saying after each mass extinction event, it takes millions of years for any species to basically jump back and jump back and basically fill the earth. It takes millions of years for them to do so. But over a few thousand years after these species have evolved, they then fill the earth. I think this is what they're trying to say here, folks. Because if you believe in evolution, well, is it really possible that these species evolved so fast in a few thousand years? Classic Darwinism theory says no. But, well, maybe these guys, Mr. Good and Eldridge, have an idea. They said, yeah, if you look at basically the fossil record, or basically look at their theory, yeah. Could and Eldridge proposed a theory of punctuated equilibrium to what is really happening in the fossil records. They said that the fossil records show long periods of stasis or equilibrium extending for millions of years, during which time there is little or no evolutionary change, which are punctuated by rapid episodic periods of speciation occurring within the space of a few thousand years. Indeed, folks. Millions of years where nothing happens. Then we have the extinction event. Then maybe a few more years. And then basically over a few thousand years after these species have basically evolved and jumped back from the edge of extinction, they filled the earth. As I said, folks, maybe they're also saying that maybe a new species evolved over a few thousand years or something. I'm not quite sure if that's what they're saying, folks, because even though they have a theory and they don't think maybe classic Darwinism is right, over a few thousand years, that's a very short time for all these species to appear. So is there something to it or not? We'll read on and find out. I think they mean basically over a few thousand years, these species filled the earth, but it would still take millions of years for these species to evolve and basically jump back after the last mass extinction event. But that's just my opinion, folks. I'm not quite sure if I understand their theory here. So let's read on basically and try to understand what they're trying to say here. Could provided further clarification in his article titled "Evolution's Erratic Pace," 1977, in which he wrote that in any local area, a species does not arise gradually by the steady transformation of its ancestors. It appears all at once and fully formed. Once a species appears, it undergoes a very little or no evolutionary change for millions of years. Most species appear in the fossil records looking much the same as when they disappear. Morphological change is usually limited and directionless. Indeed. Basically what they're talking about, basically Darwinism here, folks. But if you look at the fossil records, all these species show up and they're fully formed. So where did they come from? How did they appear? I'm just saying, folks, is maybe these people, maybe they evolved over millions of years, but It was only basically millions of years after this near extinction event happened, and these species evolved over millions of years, and only basically were seeing the fossil record after they became so widespread and spread across the earth. At that point, they were seeing the fossil record. Even though it took millions of years for them to evolve, they weren't really recorded and stuff like that in the fossil record. It took them that long to basically become so prevalent on the earth that they would basically show up in said fossil record. That's my idea here, folks. But then again, maybe it is something here. Maybe these species did evolve over several thousand years, over such a short time. Maybe this is what they're saying as well. It doesn't seem like that, folks. But as I said, Darwinism is something even I basically don't. I have my problems with it and stuff like that. And maybe I don't think it's fully. I don't think maybe Darwin or maybe Darwin's theories are basically. I think there are things and problems with it. I do have a problem with that, folks. I'm not saying that gradual evolution doesn't exist. I'm saying that it hasn't been proven either. These guys, though, they seem to think that basically rapid evolution seems to happen and occur over a very short period, over a short period of time, maybe a few thousand years. And maybe they do have some merit here, folks, because remember, as I said, in the fossil record, entire species show up fully formed, and then when they die out, they're still at that same stage as when they first appeared. So why didn't they show any gradual evolution at all, folks? Right. So there's something more going on here. But I will say, folks, and some evolutionists will point to some creatures in the geological record that do show gradual change over time. At least what they think so, folks. They will show those examples that this does prove that basically Darwin's theory is real. The thing here, folks, is that, well, even though these species do show gradual change, it's only these rare examples, so it doesn't make sense for every species. Or should I say, geologists and evolutionists can't basically find the evidence that basically all species evolved basically along the lines of Darwinism, a gradual evolution from one species to another. This is why basically people say, well, if what you're saying with Darwinism is real, then why can't you prove it with these missing links? You can't find these missing links, and to this day, folks, well, people still have not found these missing links. So maybe Darwinism, at least basically our idea with it, and maybe Darwin himself, maybe there are things about it even he himself didn't understand. Maybe he was wrong on some level, but that doesn't mean his entire theory was wrong either. That's what I'm saying, as I said. Either way, let's continue with this, folks. These guys seem here, well, I should say Good and Eldridge seem to think that maybe some species evolved over a short period of time, over several thousand years, and then they stayed like that for basically, well, for the millions of years since. So let's read on and see where they go with this theory. Could provide further clarification in his article titled Evolution, Erratic Pace, 1977, in which he wrote that in any local area, a species does not arise gradually with a steady transformation of its ancestors. It appears all at once and fully formed. As I said, folks, in some areas, or should I say, in the fossil record, these species appear fully formed, and then when they die, they're still at the same stage, and they're still fully formed and don't show any rate of change at all. So if that's true, if Darwin's theory is true, why don't we find more evidence of gradual change? As I said, evolutionary. Well, as I said before, folks, evolutionists and geologists did find some evidence of it, but it's only rare occurrences where this gradual evolution is basically found. It's like only a few things here and a few things over there. That doesn't basically show that all life evolves along these lines as well. If your only evidence is just a few species that show gradual change, but every other species doesn't, well, does that show that your theory is real, or does it show you that your theory is wrong? It shows that your theory might hold some water, but it doesn't prove that it basically is the same for all life on the planet either. Either way, this is what Good provided in his article here. These species just seem to basically appear fully formed, and once a species appears, it undergoes very little or no evolutionary change for millions of years. Most species appear in the fossil record looking much the same as when they disappear. Morphological change is usually limited and directionless. They don't basically show any change, and if they were basically evolving along these lines, folks, with this Darwinism, you would see change in it. You'd see not rapid change over millions of years in the geological record. You would see some change, certainly, right? But no, they don't find that. Now, as I said earlier, folks, there are examples of some change being found in some species over millions of years from one species evolving to another, but this is only basically a very rare thing that is found. Usually, you just find these great breaks where you find one species and then you find a different species, and no way to link them at all. So, It's an interesting idea, folks. Maybe this does so that maybe Darwinism is a very limited view of the world, and maybe it doesn't hold water with all life that exists on Earth. Either way, Good rated the paleontological community for being so heavily influenced by Darwin's theory of gradual evolution that they did not notice the obvious patterns in the fossil records. Yeah, because they were so brainwashed by it. They clearly, evolution is real, no matter what we basically find that says no, it isn't. Either way, he goes on to say, the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secrets of paleontology. Paleontologists have paid an exorbitant price for Darwin's argument. We fancy ourselves as the only true students of life's history, yet to preserve our favorite account of evolution by natural selection, we view our data as so bad that we never see the real processes. That we never see the real processes that we profess to study. What they're trying to say here, folks, what Good, or should I say, what Good here? Mr. Good, a scientist, a real evolutionary scientist, or should I say, what his theory here is saying is that in the fossil record, it basically shows that, well, Darwin's theory, it doesn't seem to hold water. What we find in our own study of basically studying the Earth and evolution and paleontology, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, he was a paleontologist and stuff like that. And he says, well, if this was so true, if basically Darwinism is true, then why don't we find gradual change? We don't. So maybe it's something else. Either way, Good, as we basically get back to the man here, folks, as we get back to what he wants us to learn about. Good was one of the most influential and widely read authors of popular science of his generation. He wrote 300 popular essays in the Natural History magazine for both specialists and non-specialists. In April 2000, in the U.S. Library of Congress named him a living legend. Throughout his career, Good insisted that the gradualistic model of evolution are simply not reflected in the fossil record, or should say in the fossil records. And there is a tendency within the scientific community to restrict their thinking within certain belief systems. Indeed, folks, this is why I said earlier in my last live stream that science was more or less thought of as a religion and not really science. Or should I say science is a religion, and the scientific theory is what we need to basically look at here, folks. Scientific theory is basically what science should always be about: finding evidence, improving your theories, and basically finding evidence to support your theories and stuff like that. Basically finding evidence, using what this could be, basically looking at the evidence, seeing if you can find ways to prove it, and then basically looking maybe more evidence that basically maybe broadens your knowledge and basically maybe not only basically proves your theory, but also basically shows how this theory can reflect on other things, like basically how one species evolves into another species, or how evolution itself, or basically how these species actually appeared on Earth. This is why he's trying to say, folks. He's saying that if you look at all of this scientifically, then Darwin's theory of evolution doesn't meet it. It doesn't basically really prove it, because if you look at the fossil record, in Good's own words, it doesn't hold water. It doesn't line up. It just doesn't work. Either way, this is what he basically proposed throughout his life. Either way, moving on to the rest of the article. In the essay Darwin's Untimely Burial, in the essay Darwin's Untimely Burial, 1976, Good gave vent to his frustration when he wrote, "I am a strong advocate for the general argument that truth, as preached by scientists, often turns out to be no more than prejudice inspired by prevailing social and political beliefs." Indeed, folks, I see that to this day, folks, that political beliefs seem to influence science, and that's bad. If you look at what's going on with the gender things and basically saying that there's 27 genders, when in reality there's only male and female, you can see how basically the political beliefs and political systems can influence science, and that is a very bad thing, because that, basically that. But also, let me try that again, folks. Prejudices, I can't say the word, folks. Prejudices that people have, and also people, if you don't believe in God or anything like that, you can see how this also affects their scientific credibility and what they believe in, and how they want to prove basically both in a social and political manner as well. So because if you look at this, like folks, people's beliefs and what they believe in are basically shaped by what they personally believe in, and they will even go out to long lines to basically prove their ideas, even if that means basically disavowing or basically even destroying evidence that basically proves their theory is wrong. So yeah, that's not science, folks. If you basically say, if you ignore something when it's clearly in front of you, well, you're ignoring evidence, aren't you? And if you let your own prejudice saying that no, if you don't believe in God, no, this can't be God. This can't be the way evolution works. This isn't how the world works. No, if you basically let a prejudice, let me try that again, folks. I know I can hear you laughing out there. If you let something like a little prejudice, if you're prejudiced against basically God or basically people's theories who don't line up with yours, if you're prejudiced against that and you let social and political beliefs also influence you, well, you're not actually a scientist. You're just some political proponent who believes you're right, and you will ignore all evidence to the contrary. Yeah, forgive me for this, folks. I can't seem to say the word prejudice. Prejudice. Yeah, prejudice. Either way, people who basically, have their own political beliefs and or basically beliefs that are ingrained in them and will ignore evidence to the contrary and stuff like that. And they'll let social and political beliefs also influence them as well. As I said, people who do that are not scientists. They're basically a little more than priests of their own scientific religion, or should I say their own religion of science, which has nothing to do with science at all. Either way, folks, let me go back over here, see if anyone's actually looking at us. So let me do this. We got 2 watching, so that's not too bad. Sorry about the delay in live streams today, folks. My internet keeps going down. Let me go over here, folks. We have 21 watching, so thank you. We have 23, 24, 25 watching. Let me try that again, folks. Yeah, we have 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Thank you for making this at least a very good live stream. But let's finish up this article, folks. Yeah. Either way, moving on. In The Return of Hopeful Monsters, 1977, Goodyear, he wrote that all paleontologists know that the fossil record contains precious little in the way of intermediate forms. Transitions between major groups are characteristically abrupt. Then in the essay titled, Is a New and General Theory of Evolution Emerging? Then in the essay, Is a New and General Evolution Emerging? 1980, Good reiterated the obvious flaws in the Darwinian models of evolution. Yeah, saying that maybe we need a new theory on it, folks, and that Darwin's theories are just, they don't work. Either way, here he says, the absence of fossil evidence for intermediate stages between major transitions in organic design, indeed our inability, even our imagination, to construct functional intermediates in many cases, has been a persistent and nagging problem for gradualistic accounts of evolution. Indeed, folks, they can't even find even artificial ones. They can't basically understand why one species is there, then another species is over there, why they're fully formed, and why they can't find any steps basically linking them. Yeah, very interesting, folks. Now, the truth is that when we go purely by the fossil records, leaving aside all theories and speculations, what we see are rapid bursts of speciation and not the long drawn-out gradual accumulation of small variations. Indeed, folks, that's what they find. They do find some small variations, though, some small instances where there is gradual change, but it's only very limited and only shows up in a few cases, not with everything. In the vast amount of these evidence that people have found, it basically says, no, this is not the way it works. Only very rarely do they find any kind of little changes at all here. So what does that say about evolution? Just because you find a little evidence, a little few changes, does not prove Darwin's theory, does it, folks? But yes, evolutionists and Darwinists will point to those things, proving Darwin was right. Yeah. Now, Good's Harvard colleague Niles Eldridge estimated that the rapid periods of evolutionary change took something between 5,000 and 50,000 years, a mere blink of an eye, geologically speaking. It's very interesting. So this is kind of basically what I see with, X-Men, or basically something out of a comic book. These sudden evolutionary changes that literally took that took place in a very limited amount of time. I mean, we're not talking about superheroes here, folks. We're just talking about these new species arising, and they seem to have arisen over a very short amount of time. So fast, in fact, it might as well be something you'd see in a comic book. Either way, moving on, it is equally fascinating that this estimate is very close to the value mentioned in the Syria Sedihanta, which is the oldest astronomical treatise of India. The text states 100 times 474 years passed while the all-wise was employed in creating the animate and inanimate creation, plants, stars, gods, demons, and the rest. This means that the entire creative process, possibly at the beginning of the current day of Brahma, took 400 years, which falls in the range of values found in Eldridge's, i.e. between 5,000 and 50,000 years. Indeed, between that time, these species rose. So if you look at basically this religious text, folks, is where it shows that life all rose in this intermediate period of time of 5,000 to 47 or to 50,000 years. All this life basically bloomed. It basically started spreading across the earth, which is very, very close to what Eldridge and Goodhere had to say about evolution. As I said, folks, maybe this is just a religious text from ancient India, but it does show some alarming tendencies to basically have very real parallels to real life. Either way, very, very, very fascinating. Once again, let's read this part of the article, which is titled Oscillations in Morphology. Once speciation is completed, every species remains amazingly stable for millions of years. That does not mean that they do not change at all. In his study of deviation trilobites, which lived between 380 to 375 million years ago, Eldridge had found that once a new species appeared, they persisted for millions of years with very little morphological change. Here's his words on it, folks. There were some oscillations in morphology, so species weren't completely invariant, but the net sum of any changes usually tended to cancel out, leading to no net change. So even though there was a little change here and there, folks, over a long period of time, it basically just petered out, and there literally was no net change into the species at all. Literally saying that you might see a few specimens of maybe gradual change over long periods of time. This change either basically died out, or it basically wasn't any better than, there was literally basically, I'm trying to find the right words here, folks. Basically, in his own words, there were some oscillations in morphology, saying that maybe there was little change here and there. So species weren't completely invariant, so they didn't just remain completely the same. But the net sum of any changes usually tended to cancel out, leading to no net change. But what that means is, folks, maybe you find a species. Maybe you'd find one species with longer tentacles than other species. Let me try that again, folks. Maybe you'd find a squid with very long tentacles, and over time, that species of squid would grow a little bigger. But over no net time would those changes go beyond that. So they wouldn't basically show evolution to a different species. No, you just have one species that would remain more or less the same over millions of years, but it might show maybe just one species, or basically maybe some of the squid having longer tentacles than the other ones. They wouldn't go any further than that in the change thing. They wouldn't eventually evolve into a different species entirely, or basically evolve into a different species of squid. They just more or less stay the same during that time. As I said, there was some change, some very small changes, but it wouldn't go beyond that. At least if you believe in Darwinism, then those changes should have basically kept adding up. There would have been more changes till this species of squid, or maybe some other animal, eventually evolved into something completely different, like say a different species of squid, or basically a new species or something like that, or basically a new dinosaur. Get it? Remember, you have the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and maybe if this Tyrannosaurus Rex over time, over millions of years, if it kept changing, it should have evolved into a different kind of species of dinosaur, maybe another kind of meat eater, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but maybe so different that it might as well be or should I say, it would be a different species. But no, you see these very light changes that don't basically add up to a different species entirely. You just see them more or less just peter out and basically just. Well, it would still be the same species it was millions of years, and would just show any changes. As I said, folks, it would basically just be the same species, but it would basically it would just show no changes that was going to basically evolve. It would show no changes that would show that it was evolving into a different species. As I said, folks, he himself says that you'd see small changes, but nothing that would add up to a different species or show that it was evolving at all. I'll just say that. I was trying to find the right words to explain what Mr. Gould here was trying to say with oscillations in morphology. He did say that there were small changes that would happen, but they wouldn't basically lead to a new species evolving. They just basically peter out and just basically just remain the same species during these millions of years. Okay, folks, I think I did well there. I think I screwed it up too. I think I took too much time on it. But let's basically get back to this, folks. Now, could basically went on to say, by the way, he also said, let me try that again, folks. Could, by the way, had also found a very similar patterns in his studies that focused on fossil land snails from the genus of Prolocosononites that lived a few 100,000 years ago during the Pleistocene. Apparently. Okay. Yeah, basically saying during this time, this basically goes on to say various things about it. So let's read what he has to say about the species of land snails, from the genus of Paleocoelurozonites. Sorry if I mispronounce that, folks. I'm trying to basically say words I'm not used to saying, and also trying to basically get you understand things that I only have a very lightly knowledge on, folks. I can understand this, folks, to somewhat, but I don't have a real good knowledge and grasp of it. But I do think he has an idea here that Mr. Good and Eldridge, both of them have good ideas about this. Either way, let's continue with Good's theory here. I was amazed to know of these findings because this is precisely what I had discovered in course of my explorations into the Yuga cycle and Yuga shift. I had proposed, based on ample data points, that both human cranial volume as well as physical size fluctuations in a sinusoidal manner over a 25,800 year precession cycle. Year precession cycle. Let me try it again, folks. I think I screwed up. This is in Gould's words, folks. This is the idea that this writer of this article, basically who's using Gould as an example, he says that what Gould found basically lines up with his ideas of how basically of evolution goes and how basically humans are affected over several thousand years. So forgive me if I was basically making you think that this is what Gould said. Either way, the writer of this article goes on to say, Mr. Let me, I guess, go up here for a moment, folks. Mr. Buba Div Miseria says what he believes about this, I think. What he goes on to say here, folks, is that, I was amazed to know that these findings, because this is precisely what I had discovered in course of my explorations into the Yuga cycle and Yuga shift. I had proposed, based on ample data points, that both human cranial volume as well as physical size fluctuates in a sinusoidal manner over a 25,800 years precession cycle without a net increase or decrease in any direction. I had also written, that this oscillation must have been going on over the past 2 million odd years of human evolution. Remember, basically, I read to you yesterday, folks, that basically human cranial capacity, maybe there was some level of change over thousands of years, but it wasn't not enough change to basically show that this species was evolving into a different species. No, in reality, folks, due to this Yuga shift cycle, our brains would get bigger, but then they get smaller again due to various things like mass extinctions and basically the day and night cycle of this Yuga shift, where we basically evolved further and then evolved back due to basically this. It has to do with religious meaning here and from India. Basically, how over this thousands of years we evolved to basically become more enlightened beings, but then it would basically shift back and we become more greedy and basically and more stupid over time. Basically, our brains would basically get smaller. This is what he's trying to say here, folks, with evolution. He's trying to say that the guy who wrote this article is saying that over thousands of years, we would show change, but this change would not basically be a net positive. We would not show that we were evolving into a new species. No. In fact, this change would basically go so far, it would only go so far, and then it would stop and then it would reverse itself before it would basically, once again, shift back in the opposite direction. What he's trying to say here, folks, is that, Good's theory here holds water for what he believes here and what he thinks is really happening with us. That over thousands of years, we evolve one way, or we change one way, we get smarter, but then it basically shifts back and we basically, once again, become greedy and stupid again. He's showing it with this little diagram here, folks, so let me read this to you. The cranial volume of Homo sapiens fluctuates over the 25,800 year Yuga cycle or precession cycle. Yeah, basically saying this, folks. The sinusoidal fluctuation of cranial volume over a 800 year cycle. Here we can see over this period, folks, cranial volume male goes up. 60. This happened basically 36,676 years before Christ, during the Cro-Magnon during the Cro-Magnon period, folks. Cranial specimens showed that their skulls were bigger, but then it starts going down. Then basically 10,876 years ago, we see it going up. Then we basically go down here, and once again, here we are, folks. We're in this area, the Holstein cranial specimens, where our bearings are once again, our cranial capacity seems to be going down. And we end up basically here in the year 2025 now, folks. Yeah, in the year 2025, and he's saying that we're basically at the cusp of a new change, where once again our cranial capacity will start going up, and we will become smarter than we were before. We will become less greedy, and we'll basically become more enlightened beings. This is what the writer of this article believes, and basically what he sees with evolution, and how scientists themselves basically prove his theory, because it basically seems to line up with all the data they seem to be collecting. Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, I don't know. Either way, let's continue with the article here, folks. And now it turns out that the oscillations in morphology occur not only in cases of humans, but it is a characteristic feature of the entire animal kingdom. All species increase and decrease in size and cranial capacity in a sinusoidal manner over the entire day of Brahma, of 12.9 million years, spanning 500 complete yuga cycles. This is why the Ice Age megafauna were so much bigger than the animals of today. It's a recurring pattern of nature. Every assertion of the Vedic text with respect to the day and night of Brahma has now been detected in the fossil records. It is not an approximate well, let me try that again, folks. It is not approximate. Let me try that again. I want to try to get through this article while I have the time. Either way, it is not an approximate correlation, but an almost exact match. Let me recapitulate. Let me try that again, folks. Let me recapitulate the important connections. 1. The fossil record shows that a mass extinction of species occurs every 26 million years, while the Vedic texts claim that all life on the earth is extinguished at the end of a day of Brahma every 26 million years. That's a startling connection, isn't it, folks? Yeah. 2. The fossil records show that it takes 10 million years for forms to emerge and for global biodiversity to recover after a mass extinction event. The Vedic texts claim that the Earth is in a lifeless state during the night of Brahma, which extends for 13 million years after an extinction event. So much like we see with basically what we're with evolution here, folks, and the fossil record. Then 3. The fossil record shows that the new species appear in rapid episodic bursts in a fully formed state. The rapid speciation events are completed within 5,000, 50,000 years. The Vedic text claims that a new species forms arise on the earth as soon as a new day of Brahma dawns, and it takes nearly 400 years for all living entities to be created. Which also seems to basically line up with basically what Gould and Eldridge were saying here, folks. So is there a relationship between basically their idea of how the evolution and geology works and what basically the writer of this article thinks as well? Maybe. But let's read on, folks, because we have to get through this article. But it's certainly very thrilling. Now, before I do, folks, let me go over here. We have 5 watching. That's pretty good. We have 29, 30 watching. That's pretty good as well, folks. The fossil records are in perfect alignment with every element of the doctrine of the day and night of Brahma. This is yet another indication of the profound knowledge of the vast time cycles that our ancestors had possessed, and they passed them down to us in simple verses. Although sometimes they also employed metaphors and symbolic images to drive home the point and aid in memorizing it, folks. Memorization, or I should say memorization. For instance, the events that occur in the course of a day and night of Brahma have also been metaphorically described as the breathing in and out of Brahma. When Brahma breathes out, life forms get dispersed across the cosmos, and when he breathes in, life forms return to the source, and the cosmos becomes becomes lifeless. In Yuga Shift, I propose that the unmanifested creative principle that the Verdict saga is called Brahma refers to the central black hole of the Milky Way galaxy, which, as most scientists agree, acts as the central engine of our galaxy. So he's basically saying that basically maybe Brahma is the black hole in the center of our galaxy, folks, and basically due to its oscillations and basically how it behaves, maybe this is a merit and basically creates life in our universe, or seriously in our galaxy at least. And when it oscillates, well, and breathes out, life is created. When it breathes back in, life ends. It's an interesting idea, basically saying that maybe it's all metaphor. That in reality, this is all hard science, and basically, maybe Brahma here, or basically this guy, when this black hole breathes out, maybe it's basically due to this black hole basically going through some sort of a cosmic or metaphorical shift in the way it behaves, which causes life to basically begin and basically flourish. And then the opposite, folks, basically get the reverse, where life ends. Perhaps, maybe it's just a natural function of the way the universe acts, and not actually due to basically it's just the way the universe works here, folks. Think of it like that. Then again, so every time this black hole bleeds out, or basically when it goes through some sort of a elemental or cosmic shift in basically how it behaves, new life is created. Interesting. Now, let's read this part of the article, folks. What does the current day of Brahma end? Or when does it end, folks? Yeah, when does the current day of Brahma end? In case you are wondering, when the current day of Brahma will come to a cataclysmic end, you can rest easy. It is still a very long way off. The last mass extinction event was the middle Mysian disruption, which occurred around 14.8 million years ago. So 14.8 million years ago then, huh? This means that the current day of Brahma started 12.9 Mira later at around 1.9 Mira. Not surprisingly, the earliest fossil remains of the genus Homo, to which our own species Homo sapiens belongs to, started appearing around the same time. The oldest hominid fossils are those of Homo habilis, dated to around 1.9 Mira. H. habilis cranial volume fluctuated between 500 cc, 800 cc over the course of its presence in the fossil records till around 1.9 Mira. The bipedal erect walking Homo erectus appears in the fossil records from 1.7 Mira till around 250,000 years ago. H. erectus shows a fluctuation in cranial volume between 850 to 1200 cc. Since the current day of Brahma started around 1.9 Mira, the next cosmic dissolution event is nearly 11.4 million years away. So we can safely take it off our calendar for now. It is not cosmic dissolution that should worry us, but the impending transition out of the Kali Yuga in 2025, which is likely to be very turbulent. Yeah. Because even though this big mass extinction event is way off, folks, there are certain smaller events, certain traumatic events that are still on the way. That's what he basically is saying there, folks. Not that I completely believe this man, folks. I do think that he does see. I do think that he basically, he has a point here that there are things in the universe we don't understand, but there are certainly links and certainly some things that keep occurring. These cycles of time and history. Extinction and rapid evolutionary change are basically where new life arises, folks. I do think that he basically is onto something here. Not that I think he's completely right about this. He might be wrong. He might be as wrong as Darwin is in his own way. Let's say this, folks. He believes that he sees basically this in these religious texts, in the Vedic texts, basically correlation with things that basically that scientists have basically found. Maybe he's right, folks. Maybe there is a correlation, but that doesn't mean it's completely true as well. As I said, folks, his theory and basically Gould's and Eldridge's theories don't disapprove Darwin's theory of evolution, but they certainly don't prove it either. And Darwin himself can do the same. So maybe Darwin is wrong. Maybe Good and the guy who wrote this article are wrong. Maybe there's more to it than we really know. That's what I'm saying there, folks. We need to learn more, and when we do, maybe we'll have a better idea about all of this. Either way, let's finish off this article. There is no doubt that our ancestors had a very sophisticated understanding of the vast cycles of time that regulate life and civilization on our planet. Unfortunately, this wisdom was gradually forgotten as we devolved along the descending arc of the Yuga cycle. The scientific advances of the past couple of centuries are now helping us to uncover the true significance of these ancient doctrines. However, in general, the attitude of scientists and academics towards the ancient cultures continues to remain dismissive. The problem is that once we become indoctrinated with a specific belief system since childhood, it becomes extremely difficult to dislodge it, even with the aid of voluminous amounts of scientific data, unless we adapt an attitude, or should I say, unless we adopt an attitude of respect towards the ancient civilizations, we will continue to remain oblivious to the grand stories of wisdom that have been encoded into their sacred texts, symbols, and magnificent archaeological monuments. Indeed, folks, just because something is old does not mean it doesn't have something to teach us about the world. And maybe there's more for us to learn, and maybe we should. As I said, folks, I think there is more for us to learn. And basically, it's not just from these ancient civilizations, but also maybe from just taking a look at other things as well, like, say, the cosmos and the universe itself, and see what it's telling us. Either way, folks, one hell of a great article, and finally I finished it. But we're at the end. Now, will I do another 2 live streams a day, folks, or 1? I'll have to do that. I'll think about that after I finish this live stream here. After all, I did 2 live streams trying to get through this article today, and I'm kind of tired. So forgive me if I don't do another live stream today or something, or just 1. Either way, folks, we're at the end. So please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics, They're Bad For You. The there's misspelled. It's THERE. It's Read Comics, They're Bad For You. It's supposed to be Read Comics, They're Bad For You, not They're Bad For You, which is, yeah, it's Read Comics, They're Bad For You. It's purposely misspelled. It's THERE. So go subscribe to Read Comics, They're Bad For You up on YouTube. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Hit the part of the bell that will give you all future notifications. And please share this video out. Now, folks, please go over and subscribe to Dark Sayings on YouTube and on BitChute. Dark Sayings is like the Art Bell radio show, or like my own show. If you like High Strangeness, you're going to love Dark Sayings. He does short videos on weird phenomena, High Strangeness, and all we love. But he also does live streams around 10 o'clock p.m. at night, where he talks about ghosts, monsters, people seeing aliens, people seeing seeing things in the world that they can't explain. People talking about the Yuga shift, to people talking about God, people seeing other things as well, folks, like Bigfoot and Mothman, are basically even, dinosaurs, or basically, dragons. And every time you watch one of Dark Sayings live streams, you learn something new about the world of the paranormal. So go subscribe to Dark Sayings on YouTube and on BitChute. Then go subscribe to Robot Co-op. Robot Co-op is basically, it's a live streaming gaming channel, but it's very much in the same spirit as an old TV show, Mystery Science Theater 3000. You know that TV show where that guy is trapped in outer space with these 2 wisecracking robots. They're forced to watch bad movies and then they roast them. Well, Robot Co-op is, it's a live streaming gaming channel, but they do have their own wisecracking robots. But it's very much like that old TV show where this guy is basically playing this game and then roasting it. And, I should say this guy and these robots are basically playing this game and they're roasting them. They play good games, they play bad games, but it's fun watching them play games and have a fun time, folks. It's like being at a party, watching these people have fun, and you have fun with them as they're playing these games. And you sit back and eat something and drink something and have a great time. And you're going to love their live streams on Sunday on Twitch, folks, because they're just so much fun to watch. So go subscribe to Robot Co-op on YouTube and on Twitch. Then go subscribe to Stitched Together Picks. Stitched Together Picks is a horror movie review channel, which is hosted by the maniacal cinephile who has more than one personality. So you're not just getting one character, you're getting a whole lot of them. All of them are fun. So go subscribe to Stitched Together Picks up on YouTube. Now remember, folks, down in the descriptions or in the chat, I left links. I left links to YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch or BitChute, Dark Sayings, Robot Co-op, and Stitched Together Picks. Remember, use those links and go subscribe to me up on, to me, folks. You can use those links to go subscribe to Robot Co-op and those other guys I mentioned, but really, I want you to use those links and go subscribe to my own channels. Because as I said, folks, I might be back today with another live stream or 2, but it won't be until after this one's over. After all, folks, I had to basically keep doing this live stream over and over again until I got through it. Either way, folks, my internet's kind of bad, so forgive me if I don't do it. But if I am back, use those links and go subscribe to me up on YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, Twitch or BitChute, Dark Sayings, Robot Co-op, and Stitched Together Picks, okay? I'm Chris Williams from the Sundogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back soon, folks. Well, maybe. Until then, as usual, folks, when I am back, we'll have some more fun. Until then, bye. All right, folks, I got through my normal spiel. Thank you all for joining me. It's been one hell of a day for me. Either way, if I'm back, we'll have some more fun. Until then, as I said, bye. Before I leave, though, we have 3 watching. We had 4 watching. We have, we had 38, 39 watching, folks. 40 watching. Ooh. Thank you for making this a great live stream, folks. I had 40 people watching, and that makes me feel good. Either way, folks, see you later.